I don't think that traditional rankings for Dynasty, I don't think I'm going to do them anymore, man. It is, first of all, the difference between wide receiver 47 and wide receiver 52, nobody gives a shit. Like, nobody cares, right? That's doing nobody any good. Where in reality, man, there are a handful of players who actually truly matter for scoring fantasy. I'm not talking about players you like or we got hope that this guy, Treylon Burks, can. I'm talking about when you put him in the lineup, there's a handful of guys that truly matter, and then a bunch of replaceable players. And what I'm watching, man, is it is a week-to-week game. If your guy is available this week, he's much higher than Aaron Jones or wherever you have Ramondre Stevenson ranked. Right now, Ramondre's out, he's hurt. Where would you rank him in Dynasty? Do you even care? Like, do you even care?
Yeah, that's fair. Do you care is no, right? What can you do for me
this week? What can you do for me right now? I don't care about 3 years from now. I don't care about two. Jay, I really don't care about the start of next season. I will figure that out in June, July, August. I feel like the volatility of the weekly game is far more actionable than me trying to project and predict who's going to be good 3-4 years from now. Hell, look at Justin Herbert, right? Whatever value was attached to him coming into the season, right or wrong, it has changed in the Dynasty landscape. The way that people value him, the way that people view him, and it means nothing to his long-term stability in Los Angeles, but in this week-to-week game that we play, where it is truly, are you on the field this week and what can you do for me right now? It feels so different now, man. And it's, what can you do for me in week 14? That's all I kind of care about. What can you do for me in week 14, week 15, and I'm looking at 16. I will deal with 24 when I get there, man. It's just different, man. I feel very strongly about this, Jay, that the traditional 1 through 100 running backs, 1 through 150 wide receiver does nobody any good. Because at the end of the day, that's just personal preference. Your wide receiver 69 versus my wide receiver 77. What good does that do anybody?
Yeah, very, very little, right? And I think you just get to the point where you maybe need 24 running backs, and that feels like a lot, right, for us. We don't roster a lot of running backs, especially the high-end ones. You know, you get into the receivers, maybe 24 to 36 matter. Maybe, for quarterbacks, you want to rank close to the whole list. But, yeah, it's a pretty shallow number. I'd say 75, 80, maybe 90 players if you want to get deep. But those are the difference makers, right? If you hit on those guys, you're in good shape. And if you miss, you're screwed.
What up, Tater Wolf? Tater Wolf said Dynasty and fantasy are different mindsets. I think it's three. I think it's Dynasty, fantasy football, weekly redraft, and the NFL. It's all three of those things are very different. All three of them are very different. And what it feels like right now in fantasy football, Dynasty as a whole, people don't know what to do. I think that as you, the consumer, you guys tapping into Wake Up, this is not the only fantasy show, fantasy service you subscribe to or look at. I mean, just think about it. Think about how it seems like from site to site, from analyst to analyst, I don't think people truly know, are we playing a weekly game? Are we playing a 2 to 3 year window game? Or are we playing the longest of long-term games? I think it's a very interesting dichotomy going on in the mind of not just gamers, but people who analyze the game, people who who create the content. I think it's a very strange sort of spot that we're in when we're looking at these assets and what to think and what to believe. If I asked you right now, Jay, Austin Eckler Dynasty rank, what would you have him at? Like, you wouldn't even know where to go. Like, just
he wouldn't be in the top 12.
Just where would you rank him right now?
17. Just giving you a random number, middle of the twos.
Okay, and I'm just looking right now, and I'm looking at where Austin Eckler is currently ranked. He's RB17. He's RB17 in between.
Look, nailed it.
Listen,
coming off a great game.
David Montgomery and Tony Pollard. He's ahead of Brian Robinson, Zach Charbonnet, Alvin Kamara, Jalen Warren. Do you want Austin Eckler over any of those guys right now? Give me Kamara over Eckler. Right now. Easily. Give me David Montgomery.
Playing awful.
It's just I don't know, man. It's something I've been.
So Ray, it's funny though. As you're saying this stuff, sorry to interrupt you. As you're saying this, what I think I'm getting more. I think the more you're saying this, the more I'm realizing. If you are playing quote unquote dynasty, you're probably falling behind, right? Because like you're mentioning, is it a week-to-week game? Is it just straight DFS at this point? Who are we stacking this week? Who are the top matchups, right? Like that's really how it feels. And you should be making moves and trades and picking guys up to anticipate top matchups and all these things. Like it really feels like, no, I wouldn't go as far to say DFS, but I would say if you are playing quote unquote Dynasty the way we used to play it like 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and you're not playing this week-to-week market, you are severely falling behind because you're not capturing value when it's at its peak and especially when it's ascending. And then you're not moving guys as they're on the way down as well. So I think you have to look at Dynasty or whatever you want to call it as a week-to-week game, or maybe like you mentioned, a 3-week game at best, because things change so much. Like if you told people that Austin Eckler was going to be garbage, like for the fantasy playoffs, because he's been playing terrible. He hasn't been doing much of anything, and he's got this great schedule. People wouldn't believe you. They'd be like, no, he's Mr. 20 touchdowns every year. But if you don't adjust to what you've seen, you're screwed. Because even going into this week, you know, like Gene had him in as a sit of the week, laid off all the reasons why. And it's not just the matchup. It's Austin Eckler not playing very well. And so you look at all these things, and if you told someone that at the beginning of the year, they'd say you're crazy. There's no way. Austin Eckler's the best. Start him every week. And so I think that's the thing, is that if you're playing this quote unquote Dynasty game, the long term, and especially if you're rebuilding, whatever, you know, do whatever you want to do. But if you're not and you're contending, it's a week to week game. It has to be. Too much changes week to week.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I do think there's still value in like the top tier players. Like I definitely think that the ones that do matter, the 15 quarterbacks that matter, the 15 running backs that matter, the 20 wide receivers, and the 8 tight ends, yeah, you could prioritize those. But deeper as you go, liquidity. Who can I move? Who can I capitalize on?